Hey, how we doing everyone? This is Chris Duffy with Pioneer Property Partners. I have not made a video in a while, so I figured I'd make one, and today I want to talk about questions that you should ask a mobile home park owner when you're calling them up, when you're looking for a deal, whether it's brokering or investing or whatever it is that you do. Just some preliminary questions that I like to ask. This is not like a comprehensive list, but it's some good high-level questions that I think you should try to ask on the first call. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and jump right in. So the first question I like to ask an owner is how many sites or how many lots are out at the actual park. So a site or a lot just means a home can be placed on it. There's enough space. You're not violating any codes or anything like that. You can actually set a home on there and the utilities are already ran there. And how many homes are on those sites? So how many of those sites are occupied with actual mobile homes? And they may say something like there are 50 total sites and there are 40 homes out there. So that means 10 of the lots are vacant right now. The next question I ask is how many are, you see this commonly, TOH abbreviated, or POH is the abbreviation, and that's for tenant-owned home or park-owned home. Okay, and what that means is either the tenant, so the person who is actually living on the site, owns the mobile home, or the park owns it, meaning the owner. And there are different ways to ask this question. So you might ask, like, how many rentals are there? I found that park owners all have like different ways of saying that they own the home. So they might say, oh, I have X amount of rentals. Typically all you need to say is how many of the homes are owned by your tenants and how many of the homes are owned by you. Now, if the homes are owned by the tenant, you don't have to really worry about this question, but if they are owned by if any of the homes are owned by the owner, you want to know the age, okay? The newer and the more updated, usually the better, depending on your business model. Maybe you flip the homes or something like that. But if they have a bunch of homes that they own and they're very, very old and dilapidated homes, it's going to affect the price. The next question I like to ask is, what's the rent, right? So typically in a park, there's two different types of income. It's the income on the lots and then the income on the homes. And then sometimes owners will just kind of lump it all in together. And of course, there can be different types of income. Maybe there's laundry or vending machines and things like that. But for the simplicity of this, we're just going to talk about rents from homes and lots. So they may say something like, well, the tenants who own their homes, they just pay me a lot rent of $300 a month. And then they may say, well, the ones where I own the homes, I just charge them $800 and that's for everything included. Okay, the next thing I like to ask is about the utilities, because essentially all a mobile home park is like a parking lot with utilities in a sense, depending on if you own the homes or not. So you're going to want to know what's in the ground as far as plumbing, and then you're going to want to know about the electric situation as well. And some parks have gas, so you want to ask about that as well. Next question I like to ask is I want to know about the utility situation, because a park it's almost like a parking lot with roads and utilities is a way to think about it. So you want to know what's in the ground or what's overhead and supplying utilities to your tenants. So that could be water, sewer, electric, or some parks have gas. Now, what I like to ask is, what is the plumbing situation like? Meaning, is it city water and city sewer, or is it a private system? So city water, city sewer means it's municipal, means like the county or a separate like third party private company supplies those utility services. And then if you have a private system, which some people have private systems at their homes, it's not a huge deal. It's okay, if it's supplying the water. And then as far as sewer goes, it could be septic, could be like a packaging plant, it could be a lagoon. There's a few different types of private systems that I've seen on parks. Most park owners do favor public water and public sewer, and that's to take a lot of liability off their plate. Because if you're supplying the utilities, you have to think it's like you're almost like the utility company. So if you have contaminated well water and you supply that to a tenant, that's a big risk, right? So it just takes a little more stringent testing and things like that, whereas that risk is kind of taken off of you if you have public water or public sewer. And some park owners prefer private systems, which is fine. And once you kind of determine all that, what I like to ask is, well, who pays for the utilities? Because some park owners include it in the rent, and some park owners kind of push it back onto the tenants. And what I like to ask usually is, are you including it in the rent is a good way to ask, or you can say, do your tenants pay it? And if the tenants do pay it, you can ask if it's direct billed, meaning that if they pay the utility company totally separate of you, or if it's like a bill back program, meaning you pay it and then you roll that onto their rent, or at the end of the month you say, hey, you owe me this is what you consumed, and you kind of get reimbursed for it. Okay, so another question I ask is, do you have a mortgage? Do you have debt on the property? Some park owners who have owned the parks for a really, really long time own them free and clear. They've owned them for like generations or something like that. It's pretty wild. It's a good question to ask because if some parks don't all qualify for regular bank financing, meaning you can't go to the bank and say, hey, I want to get a loan on this. They won't give it to you. Usually depends on the condition and the size of the park and where it's located. So if they don't have a mortgage, it can open up more doors to like creative deals or creative financing. So maybe they hold the mortgage on the property, and even if they have a mortgage, it doesn't mean they can't hold some of the financing. But if they do own it free and clear, typically it makes it a little bit easier to get the deal done if you're going to do a creative deal. So kind of back to the utilities thing. Another question I ask is about separate electric meters. It's not that common to find parks that are all running on one electric meter. I don't even think that's legal anymore, but I still ask it. I just say, is everybody on their own electric meter? Because I have actually seen more than one home sharing a meter, which again, I don't even know if that's up to code, but it's just something to ask, make sure everybody kind of takes care of their own electric. Next thing is I ask about a manager. I just kind of want to know, do you have a manager already in place? Could the park support an on-site manager? Or sometimes the owner manages the park themselves. They do everything. They do all the repairs. They do all the leasing. They do everything top to bottom. And I ask about the age of the park. The reason I like to ask this is it usually gives me actually a good concept of maybe the condition that the utility system is in. So if they say the age of the park is, it was built in the 1950s, and they haven't done anything to the utility system, meaning all that plumbing in the ground is original, could be a ticking time bomb, right? And the last thing that I usually ask them, and a lot of owners won't give you this, and this is again, this is for if you're a broker or an investor like myself. I'm both. I just say, this is how I say it. I say, hey, I'm not going to hold you to this number, but what would you want to get for something like this, right? Instead of just saying, hey, what's your price? And it's good to kind of feel out an owner and see if this is even really, if it's worth your time, right? Because if somebody throws out some number and it's totally astronomical, it's just probably not something you should spend your time on right this second. Maybe down the road, maybe they come back to reality. But if you can kind of get an idea of what they're trying to get, and then you take this information and you go back and sharpen your pencil and say, you know what, that's actually a reasonable price. Well, now you know kind of where they're at and if this is a reasonable thing to entertain. So those are just some high-level questions, guys. Again, this is not like a top-to-bottom comprehensive list of questions you should ask. This is just what I call like boilerplate questions, back of the napkin, if you will, that I always like to ask. I try to always get all this information on the very, very first contact or phone call that I have with an owner. And yeah, I would recommend asking these next time you take a shot. Please let me know if you have any questions on that, and thanks for watching.